We're going to shift gears here, and we're going to be stepping back into Proverbs. I just got to tell you, it is a wonderful thing, though, isn't it, to gather and take communion together? Like it's okay online, right? But it's something about being together that is, it's special. The church is the ecclesia, right? It's the assembly of God's people. So I know we're the church even when we're dispersed, right? But in the word itself assumes gathering. And so this is really good, really special. All right. When I was, never forget this night, I am heading to bed in my dorm room. And as I was about to climb into bed, one of my friends from down the hall came in, and he had that crazy look in his face. You know people like that, right? When they're about to do something that could get you into trouble. And he came in and he said, "Guys, you got to come up to the roof." Now, I'm at Moody Bible Institute. It's Dreyer Hall. There's like 3 levels, and there's a rooftop. It's a beautiful rooftop. It's fenced in, so you can go up there and you can kind of like look at the city at night. And even though it's only 3 stories up, it's a beautiful view. And so anyway, I went up to the roof. I mean, what could go wrong, right? And so I went up to the roof, and there's some guys standing around, and they have a stack of plates, and they're handing out like real plates, from the student dining room. And of course the plates are going out, and I'm thinking, oh, are we doing like a pagan service here? What's going on, right? Plates and a night, and and I didn't really know what they were getting at, right? And so I'm just gonna watch and see what happens, And so everybody took their plates, and on the count of 3, they all threw them over the fence into the parking lot below. And, you hear all the crashes and all the breaking and all this, and I'm like, stolen property from the Moody cafeteria, breaking on the ground in the night, and certainly public safety is on the way, right? Moody's public safety, they're going to be here soon. And so we all ran downstairs, and we got into our beds and pretended to be asleep in case someone would knock on our doors and find out what was going on, right? And I'm laying there with my eyes like bugging out of my head, like what just happened, right? And maybe that was a small thing, but to me I felt like, I was there for it, I saw it. I didn't really want to do it. I didn't really want to participate in it though. Proverbs says there's two kinds of friends that you can have in life. There's 2 kinds. There's wise friends, and there's the other kind. There's the foolish friends. Now, my friend that invited me to the rooftop, if I look at a quick glance at his Facebook page, he's in ministry, he's got a great wife and family, and serving the Lord, and I'm sure he's not throwing items off the rooftops anymore, or teaching his kids to do the same, right? But in that moment, I was like, nah, I can't do that. I can't do that. So this message is about wisdom for friending and unfriending. Sorry for the Facebook reference there, but it's wisdom for friending and unfriending. And as you know, Proverbs has a lot to say on friendships. First thing we'll talk about today is Proverbs 13:20. And then I'm going to illustrate what a wise friend looks like, what they do. But just to get us thinking about friendship here, it says, whoever walks with the wise becomes wise, but a companion of fools will suffer harm. So, 2 kinds of friends that you have in your life. Wise ones, foolish ones. Now you might say, that's a little harsh, Pastor, because I don't like to think of my friends as either wise or fools. And Jesus said, call no man a fool, right? My grandma always quoted me that one, don't call anyone a fool or you'll be in danger of the fires of hell, and I was like, all right, I won't, I took that seriously, right? But here it says, if you're a companion of fools, you're going to suffer harm. And if you walk with the wise, you're going to become wise. So there's an invitation there to say, what kind of people am I friends with? And maybe it'd be helpful to see it as on a spectrum a little bit, that over on one side, there's wisdom, and over on the other side, there's foolishness. And we probably have friends that fall somewhere on that spectrum, maybe more on the wise side, or maybe more on the foolish side. But maybe you don't want to go all the way off the chart on the other side. I was reading somebody that suggested there's actually 3 types of people you know in your life: wise, foolish, and this guy added a third category: wicked. You know, and I'm not necessarily talking about like if you have a wicked friend, if they're evil and doing evil things, like they shouldn't be your friend. You know, I mean, they're just going to hurt you and harm you, and evil is like targeting people and violent and abusive, and you know that's like a different kind of thing. But I'm talking about this verse: wise and foolish, and certainly they fall somewhere in that spectrum. Now, wise friends, according to this verse, are people that you need to respond to in a way where you invest in them, you enrich them. Notice they're becoming more wise because they know you, and you're becoming more wise because they know that you know them. So there's this mutual thing going on here of enrichment that you have with your friend. Do you have friends like that, where you're a better person, a more godly follower of Christ, just because you know that person and they enrich your life? That's a great friend. Now, on the other side of that are the foolish friends. Here's a plate, let's throw it off the roof kind of friends. And they cause you harm because sometimes they bring you into their foolishness. Or they're doing something that's going to end up hurting you, harming you. They're going to say things, we'll get to that later, that are going to be offensive to you and bring you down, right? These are the more foolish friends. They're going to bring you harm. So what has to happen there? Well, next week I'm going to talk very pointedly about folly. Folly. I mean, that's next week. But I think I should say right now, before we go any further into the wise friends, just to say this about foolish friends. Foolish friends, you have to put some limits on them, right? There has to be boundaries with foolish friends, or they bring you right into that harmful behavior. I mean, you can't really help if you happen to have a coworker that's really, really foolish, or a neighbor that's foolish, or a brother or sister in your family that's foolish. You're going to spend some time with those people. But you got to put limits on it. And part of our problem is, I think sometimes, is we treat the foolish friend the same way we treat the wise friend, right? Like, my heart is open, I'm loving, I kind of let you in, and I'm very accepting. And the foolish friend's like, man, I can take that and run with that and cause a lot of harm to your life, whether they mean to or not, maybe not. But you got to treat a foolish friend in a certain kind of way. And that is, there's limits, there's boundaries, and when you break the boundaries, well, there's consequences. Because if I treat a foolish friend the way I treat the wise friend, they bring all of that into my life. And you have to be careful there. So now I want to keep going, and I want to say, okay, so what do wise friends do? How do they interact with us? What makes a wise friend a wise friend? I would invite you to go to Proverbs chapter 27. That's where we're going to spend most of our time this morning. Proverbs chapter 27, and taking a look at how wise friends interact. Proverbs chapter 27, verses 6 through 10. Verses 6 through 10. Actually, we'll start with verse 5, because I think that kind of captures it pretty well. Proverbs 27, verse 5. Better is open rebuke than hidden love. Faithful are the wounds of a friend. Profuse are the kisses of an enemy. One who is full loathes honey, but to one who is hungry, everything is bittersweet. Everything bitter is sweet, sorry. Like a bird that strays from its nest is a man who strays from his home. Oil and perfume make the heart glad, and the sweetness of a friend comes from his earnest counsel. Don't forsake a friend or your father's friend. Don't go to your brother's house in the day of your calamity. Better is a neighbor who's near than a brother who is far away. So here's what wise friends do based on this passage. Wise friends will say the hard things to you. They will say the hard things to you. Look at this. Better is open rebuke than hidden love. So we're talking about correction. We're talking about a rebuke. We're talking about when you start going down a path that's not the straight path of Proverbs 4, right? That we talked about a few weeks ago. You're going down a different path, and a friend sees that and sees the destruction, sees the pain, sees the problem of sin or whatever it is, and they sit down with you in love, and they point it out. And it says, wounds faithful are the wounds of a friend. Or I think maybe as I learned it growing up, wounds of a friend can be trusted. They can be trusted. They're faithful. So here it is. If you are a maturing, wise person, you are able to handle the correction of a friend. Over and over and over again in Proverbs, you see this idea that when you correct a wise person, he'll love you. If you correct a foolish person, he'll hate you. See, when you do the same kind of thing with same kinds of people, it doesn't always work out well. But when you have a wise friend, you can sit down with them and say, you're a great friend and I love you and you're a wise person. I see a very dangerous action or habit or a trend or a path that you're on. And we got to talk about it. Now, I will fully admit something to you here. When people have pointed this out to me, I struggle. I don't know about you, but I struggle. I remember somebody calling me. I remember what time of year it was. It was like Christmas time. And the person called me, and this is a person that has been my friend, but has been, I'll say dishonest sometimes, that I've had to talk with about that, you know? And they called me around Christmas time and said, Niall, you said you were going to do this, but you didn't do it. And that's hurtful that you didn't do what you said you were going to do. And when I'm on the phone, right? And like everything in me is like, no, you're the dishonest person, and we've talked about this, and boom, 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 right? And go down the line. I mean, that's just the initial reaction. Defensive, I'm good, I'm right. But that's not wisdom talking right there, right? That's foolishness. A wise person will love you when you point something out. And so I had to get in a different mindset. Unfortunately, I asked for the Lord for grace in that moment to be able to hear it and say, okay, yes, you're right. I did say that, and I didn't follow through, and I'm sorry. And don't you hate saying sorry when you feel like they're the greater offender? You know what I mean? Are they, though? Are they the greater offender? Or am I just minimizing my own sin, right? See how we do this? We play this game, and Proverbs gets right to it and says, no, when a friend comes to you, the mark of wisdom and maturity is that you can take it. Think about this today in our culture. People want to sin and want other people to affirm them, right? I'm going to do this, I'm walking down this path, and if you don't affirm this path and affirm this sin, then we can't be friends. We can't be in a relationship. Man, I see that on social media all the time. People saying, I'm going to make this statement. If you don't like it, you can just unfriend me, you know? You see that? If you don't affirm my choices, and in particular, my sins, then fine, we're done. But wise friends don't live like that. And mature people can handle it. That's a heart check for me. I hope it is for you. A wise friend will say the hard things. A wise friend will also say the helpful things. So there's a little bit of lightness here, right? So he goes on. There's this interesting verse in the middle. Did you notice it? He says, one who is full loathes honey, but one who is hungry, everything bitter is sweet. And I was kind of thinking about that, like, what does that mean? Why does Solomon put that right in the middle of these verses, right? Have you ever been super hungry and someone puts a meal in front of you and you're so hungry that even though you don't really like what they put in front of you, it's not like your favorite thing, you're so hungry that it looks good and you eat it and you love it and you don't complain. And you're not even in your heart because you were so hungry, right? For some reason, you know, even the fast food that you know is bad for you, and at most days you kind of go, oh, I don't know if I want that. That's like the fast food thing. But when you're really hungry, the fast food looks kind of good, doesn't it, you know? Probably a bad analogy, but we've all been there. We've all been there and said, I'm so hungry, I don't care what you put in front of me. I'm going to eat it, I'm going to love it. Now, that's what a wise person's like. Do you see the connection here, where he's going with it? When you are hungry for wisdom, hungry for God's truth, put that meal in front of me. I don't care how bitter it is. I need it, and I'm going to eat it. Kind of reminds me of Revelation. Wasn't there a scroll that was bitter that was eaten, right? Sometimes the word of God is bitter, isn't it? Where you take it in and you're like, I didn't like that word. That was a hard word. I didn't want to hear that today. But man, I needed to hear it today. And a mature, wise person says, give me the word. And even if it confronts me, even if it makes me feel kind of lousy, I'm not going to mistake offense with conviction, right? I'm not going to get offended. I'm going to get convicted and make changes. And that's the wise person. They sit down to the bitter meal and they eat it up because they know they need that truth. Shouldn't have compared truth to McDonald's. I shouldn't have done that. But okay, you get what I'm saying, though. You get where I'm going with that, the fast food thing. So now he says, look, oil and perfume, verse 9, make the heart glad, and the sweetness of a friend comes from his earnest counsel. So for the second time now, I'm hearing that words are important between friends. Hard words and helpful words. Counsel, good advice, truthful sharing, biblical sharing. One of the best things you can do, right, is share, I read this verse and maybe this has something to say about what we're going through right now, and you just share the verse. Some of the wisest people are verse sharers with me, right? And they're not mean-spirited, right? I know some of you say, well, I know some mean-spirited verse sharers, and they're kind of like, hey, I'm not talking about that kind of person, right? That's trying to wound you. Do you know people like that? I'm not trying about people that like get out the sword and they just love jabbing people with it. You got your own problem if you enjoy jabbing people with the sword. That's a different thing. But some of the best things I've received from friends are people that have thought biblically about something and offered counsel. And he compares it to the sweetness of oil and perfume that makes the heart glad. Now we know ancient culture, oil and perfume is kind of important. It's used sometimes in religious ceremonies, but it's also used to perfume the body or the air. This is like, animals are outside and people are outside and there's sweating that goes on, right? But perfume and oil, they kind of, they can cover that up and give that pleasant aroma. So listen, not to get too crude here, but when life really stinks, oh, that you would have a friend that'd be able to speak biblically, truthfully, wisely into your life to give you a perspective that you need to hear, right? There's something about the wise that surround themselves with other wise people that they're able to hear their counsel. Now maybe you say, I don't have friends like that. My friends, if they told me what to do, it'd probably be the wrong thing. Now that's just a statement of like where you're at, right? Where you're at. Or maybe you say, I want friends that affirm me, going back to that idea. If you just want friends to affirm all of the decisions you make, what you really want is a flatterer, That's what you really want. Tell me I'm right. Tell me I'm doing the right thing. Now, we all need encouragement, don't get me wrong. We all need friends to build us up. And that's part of that counsel, I think. Like, you're doing a good job. Keep going. There's encouragement there. There's counsel there. Maybe try it this way. But if all you want is people to tell you that you're right, you want flattery. And that's another issue, right? So the last one here is down to verse 10. Don't forsake your friend or your father's friend. Don't go to your brother's house in the day of your calamity. Better a neighbor who is near than a brother who is far away. So finally we say this. A wise friend will say, I'm going with the saying theme as you can see. The wise friend will say, I'm here. I'm here. These are the people that you could call at 3 a.m. and they won't be ticked off to hear your voice. They won't be mad that you woke them up. They'll be glad that they can step in and give you good counsel or guidance or be there for you. It's the person when life hits and things are hard, you say, I'm calling that person. That's it. I'm here. Good friends are loyal. When things get hard, they don't abandon you. They stick with you through those things. We all need people like that are there in a moment's notice. A number of years ago, very first time I went out on a boat. I bought a boat and I went out. I watched YouTube videos and I'd see other people, do the boat thing, and I think I knew what I'm doing. I know what I'm doing. It was Mother's Day, and most people were not in the lakes yet because they just weren't out on Mother's Day in May, And I went out, first time, Whole family's on the boat. We're excited. First time out. It's Mother's Day. Celebrate, Mom. And we went out pretty far. I mean, there's a lot of lakes up north, and they go lake to lake to lake to lake. And so you start covering all these lakes and getting very far from where you went in, right? And we're pretty far out. And we stopped, and we kind of like anchored for a while and sat there, and we're like, oh, this is so beautiful, right? And then we went to start the boat back up. And it didn't start. Happy Mother's Day. It didn't start. And so suddenly I'm like, I get the manual out. What am I doing wrong? Start it. It's not starting. Look at the manual. I'm Googling stuff. And I'm one of those guys, right? I'm just like anybody else. I don't want to ask for directions. YouTube's safer because you're not actually asking a physical person, right? You can like watch it and say like, I think I see what he did there, and I feel better about it because I'm still kind of doing it myself, kind of. We sat there for maybe, was it 2 hours? Yeah, okay. Yeah, there we go. Happy Mother's Day. It was awful. And we're out there, and so finally, after a few hours, we're like, we can't sit here until the sun goes down, people. And it was going down. It was going down. And so finally, I called a friend. He hadn't even put his boat in for the season yet, He wasn't prepared for this. I put him out on Mother's Day, and I called him, and I said, I need help. And he put his boat in the water, right? First time of the season, whatever he had to do to get that ready, he got it ready. And he came out. Maybe he's listening today. That'd be really great if he was. And he came out, he pulled up right next to our boat and said, oh, man, you just flooded the engine, And he's just kind of messing around with it. And boom, we're going again. Oh, my boat is working, it's doing what it's supposed to do, and we're just fine, and we laughed about it later. I think he laughed harder than me, though, if I'm honest about it. He laughed a little harder than me. But that's it. That's it. In the crisis, in the moment, who do you call? You need a wise friend, a loyal friend, a friend that will say the hard things, the helpful things, and that will say, I'm here right when you need me. Those are the kind of people we need in our life. And the mark of wisdom is that you're able to hear correction and truth when it goes against what you've been doing, thinking, or saying. A few more things I want to say. I'm going to save them for next week when I get to the folly sermon. I kind of knew I was going to do that. So I'm going to skip to the end here. And so don't look at any of that. Close your eyes. Okay, there we go. There we go. I know. I want to talk next week a little more on folly and then how some friendships end, fracture, and how we should get through that fracturing of friendships. Okay? So that's next week. I'm going to end with this, though. Check this out. Jesus says, no longer do I call you servants, for the servant doesn't know what his master's doing. But I have called you friends, for all that I've heard from my Father I've made known to you. Do you hear that? Jesus calls his people friends. You get an upgrade with Christ. So maybe you're saying right now, I don't have one of those really wise friends. I don't have the 3 a.m. friend. A few things you can do. First of all, you can pray for one and see how God provides that. Second of all, you could get in a small group. We'll be launching small groups again in the fall. If you're not part of one, that would be like the smartest thing you could do to build a friendship. Get in a small group with other believers and build that. Without that, there's been a lot of times in my life where I don't know if I would have gone as deep with people without those small groups in my life. Highly recommended. But then thirdly, I would say to you this verse. It's a beautiful thing to serve God and to be God's servant, right? We're supposed to serve the Lord. But Jesus is like, I'm going to give you an upgrade here because I've told you all these things that my Father wants you to do. To love him, obey him, serve him, all these wonderful things. I'm giving you an upgrade, and you are now called friends. Jesus is a friend of sinners. He's a friend of those in need. Never think that you are just this person that's unimportant to him. He's given you words of life. And again, you see the theme here? That when when you get words of wisdom and truth, righteous words, the mature people can handle that, and they become a friend of Christ. Let's pray. Lord Jesus, I thank you for this reminder of the beauty of wise people in our life. I pray that you give everybody here friends that are wise. Father, for those that are involved in relationships that are hard and foolish, I know we're talking about that more next week, but I pray that even now you begin to give them some wisdom on what that looks like, to put good boundaries up and good limits and not fall into the harm of fools. Father, I thank you for sending Jesus to call us his friends. That he wanted us closer and closer and closer. Not just a servant who doesn't know what the master's up to, but a friend who does know what the master's up to. Seeking and saving the lost. Going out with the gospel. Doing your work. Walking in a straight path and being corrected when we get out of line. Would you give all of us the humility? Would you give all of us the humility to be able to be corrected and take it and walk in it? In Christ's name I pray. Amen.